Again, welcome to Top Boxing. Let's talk Errol Spence versus Canelo, Saul Alvarez. Now, if you've advocated for Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence, then this is the type of fight you would want to see. If you've advocated for Devin Haney versus what they call now Mr. Cap, then this is the kind of fight you would want to see. Or if you're trying to stir some attention to Danny Garcia versus Errol Spence, this is this kind of press that you put out there. So, is this a fight that we would want to see? And at what weight class could this kind of fight be sanctioned? And it's interesting because it's a clash of styles. You have a guy like Errol Spence that arguably comes forward 100% of the time. Well, nothing is absolute, so 95% of the time he's coming forward. And part of that percentage being down to 95% is his last fight against Porter, where he at times was pushed back on his heels by Porter. Now, at 147, Porter is a strong fighter. If you don't give him skills, if you don't give him intellect as far as IQ, which he has, him and his father both, you have to give him strength and endurance. So, is this a fight we want to see? Who's interested in Errol Spence versus Canelo, other than it's a spectacle, right? I'm not sure whose legacy it improves in any way, but it is a spectacle. It is a money-making venture, and people would pay to watch that. Let's just say it happens somewhere at 160 and 165. We know that Errol Spence does all he can to make 147. Should technically be a 154-pounder, if not for his associations with the Charlo brothers. So let's just say that they meet at 160. What does Errol Spence look like at 160? Not just jump one or two weight classes, but what does he look like at 160? And since Canelo's fighting at 168, we would have to assume that he come down at 160 to somewhere in the middle as a catch weight. But we've seen Errol Spence in between fights and what he looks like at the higher weight. Granted, he's not training during this time, but it's a good representation of what he looks like. So, and what does Canelo looks like at 160? We know he is accustomed to going up and down in weight. I think they've figured this out pretty well with what he's been able to do going up and down the weight classes. Now, we may never see him again at 147 or 154. What did he fight? Floyd. I think he fought Floyd at 152. So it's an interesting fight, to say the least. I see three keys to this. I see skill level, I see power, and I see endurance. Skill level, it's a tight rope here. I kind of want to give to Canelo, but in the end, I think skill-wise, with everything that Errol was able to do, I have to give it to Errol. Okay? And especially in, campaigning in the welterweight division with all these skill fighters. But to say who has fought perhaps more skillful fighters, I would have to say Canelo thus far. I said more skillful fighters. So in terms of the number of fighters that they've fought so far. So skills I give to Errol Spence. It could be argued. Power at that weight, not knowing what Errol would bring to the table, I have to give that to Canelo. Because we've seen the Kovalev fight. Not that Kovalev has the best of chin. We've seen other fights where he's been able to put guys down, just stalking them, and that's what he brings to the table more than anything. Uh, is a guy with tremendous patience. Even in his loss to Floyd, you saw that he remained patient. Uh, kind of rushed things a few times in that fight and got out of character a little bit in that fight. But that's understandable going against arguably the best ever. So it's a very peculiar fight. So power I give to Canelo, skills I give to Errol Spence, and it comes down to endurance. Watching Canelo, it's kind of hard sometimes to say if he's fading at the end of fights, but I think he's one of the guys that come in the best of shapes. Uh, Now, Errol Spence, on the other hand, has himself said that, in the past, there's some things he hasn't taken seriously enough to come in the best of shape or otherwise, to make the weight in the best of ways, where he's retaining power, endurance, and stamina. So it's a toss up. So endurance, I would give that to Canelo. So to me, Canelo is 2-1 in those three criteria that I have said. Skills, go to Errol Spence, power to Canelo, and endurance to Canelo. Especially at 160, 165, not knowing what Errol Spence would bring to the table. And what kind of fight would they have to fight? I almost can tell you what. It's interesting because Errol Spence is not a guy that goes backwards willingly. Right? So we've seen Canelo fight on his back foot. So we know he can't do that. We know he kind of relished doing that. We've seen that against Triple G. We know he likes to play against the rope. He does have a little rope of dope to him. He can hit off the ropes. Now, who honestly can say we can see Errol Spence backing him up or bringing the fight forward on his front foot? Who can honestly say that? But at the same time, if Errol find himself going backwards, we don't know if he's able to do that consistently. We don't know if that's not a recipe for disaster against a guy like Canelo that catches you on the rope and puts you to sleep. Especially with this Errol Spence. I hate to bring it up, but this is a different Errol Spence. Quite frankly, I think this whole stunt is to say that, hey, I'm fighting Danny Garcia here. Pay attention to me. We're coming up. It has no intention on fighting a guy like Canelo. But Canelo is a name. He's a ticket. So even guys like Spence, can utilize his name. Not to say that Spence doesn't have a name. He does have a great name. It has a great resume as well, which he keeps building, and who's going to get better. Now, we have to look at this and say this is probably just a joke, and we'll never see, at least not for the next few years, especially as relevant as Canelo is still. So it was good to go down this and kind of look at both fights. But you probably say, well, what would you pick if this was to happen? Well, first I need to see. Well, first, Errol Spence to concentrate on Danny Garcia. And the only way I would even think about this fight is to see him at a higher weight class, especially fighting some other guys, probably. And that's something else I think people need to think about. People always look down on Crawford for not wanting to fight, quote unquote, his friend, Porter. Porter, to me, doesn't seem to reciprocate that same feeling that he doesn't want to fight his friend. Who knows how close they are or how close they're not. That's not the point. the point is, technically, Errol Spence should be fighting at 154. Are we gonna put pressure on him to fight Jamel? That's his friend. Are we gonna put pressure on him if he was to move up another weight class to fight Jamal? Now, if you're advocating for those fights and say it doesn't matter, this is boxing, maybe these are some types of fights that should advocate for as well. Truth be told. So, I'm not going to make a pick of who I think would win. If it's pre-crash, Errol Spence, I like his chin. I like his chances. At least to take it to a decision or the later championship rounds. But I would favor Canelo at this point, even at this point. So which means if it's post-accident Spence, it remains the same if you use the same logic, because we don't even know what Spence will look like. So let's see what he looks like against Garcia. And I wish him the best of luck in that endeavor. And I hope he comes out on top. I actually made a video on that. You should check that out as far as the prediction for that particular fight. But it's interesting to look at these fantasy fights, really, because that's what it is. Maybe it's a dream fight for him, and he's looking at it and seeing how he would slay that beast, he being Errol Spence. So, thanks again for putting out a few videos today to have stopped in to see Top Boxing. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're interested in talking boxing, this is the Objective channel. I will give it to you as I think it is, and hopefully we can build on some boxing. Whether you agree or disagree, please comment, like, and subscribe. Again, have a good one.